They once seemed untouchable. They were Hollywood's golden couple, shining brighter than ever. However, behind the scenes, Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman have had to deal with extremely devastating and deeply personal battles that no one saw coming. What started off as a fairy tale and the perfect love story soon turned into a fight for survival, not against scandals or fame, but against something far more terrifying. It turns out that Keith Urban, the legendary musician we all love, has been through some really rough health battles, and one in particular has left fans stunned. But what really happened behind the glamorous smiles of Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban? And how did a shocking health scare completely shake one of Hollywood's most beloved couples to their core? Keith Urban's rise to fame. Keith Urban is a Grammy-winning country music singer, songwriter, and guitarist known for his heartfelt lyrics, energetic performances, and international success across Australia and the United States. But despite all that fame and success, Keith has had to deal with some heartbreaking situations that so many people have no idea about. But before the world got to enjoy his beautiful talent, and before everyone recognized him and Nicole Kidman as one of Hollywood's most beloved couples, Keith was fighting a very different battle while trying to get to the very top of Hollywood. Keith Lionel Urban was born on October 26, 1967, in Whangarei, New Zealand. But it wasn't long before his family packed up and moved across the Tasman Sea to Queensland, Australia. Growing up, Keith lived a pretty simple, working-class life. His father, Bob, ran a convenience store, and young Keith spent his childhood surrounded by the sounds of country music, thanks to his parents, who were both big fans. At the young age of 4, Keith began to show an interest in music, and he began strumming a ukulele. By the time he was 6, he had already graduated to the guitar, and it became clear he wasn't just playing around. He had real talent. His parents encouraged him every step of the way, even putting an advertisement in the local newspaper looking for a guitar teacher to help their son. Throughout his school years, Keith stayed laser-focused on music. He entered talent competitions, appeared on local television shows, and performed anywhere he could. While most kids his age were dreaming about cricket or surfing, Keith had a different vision. He wanted to be a star. He began by covering different songs, but he wasn't just singing covers. Keith was already blending country with rock influences, adding his own unique spin to everything he played. And guess what? That fearless creativity made him stand out, even when country music wasn't exactly huge in Australia at the time. By the late 1980s, Keith had carved out a name for himself on the Australian country music scene. He signed a record deal with EMI Australia, and in 1991, he released his self-titled debut album, Keith Urban. It featured a mix of heartfelt lyrics and catchy melodies, showing off the early stages of the sound that would later make him famous. The album had moderate success, but Keith knew if he wanted to take his career to the next level, there was only one place he had to be. And that place was Nashville, Tennessee, the heart of country music. In 1992, Keith made the bold decision to leave everything he knew behind and chase his dreams in the United States. He packed up his life and moved to Nashville, a city famous for making and breaking musical legends. But his success didn't happen overnight. In fact, Nashville wasn't easy. Keith had to work hard to get noticed. He spent years writing songs for other artists and playing guitar sessions in studios. In a city overflowing with talent, standing out was tough, but Keith's skills, both as a musician and a performer, slowly started getting attention from people in the industry. In the mid-1990s, Keith formed a band called The Ranch, alongside Jerry Flowers and Peter Clark. The group had a raw, fresh sound that blended country with edgy rock elements. In 1997, The Ranch released their only studio album, and even though it didn't dominate the charts, it introduced so many people to Keith Urban. Everyone finally began to notice his musicianship, stage presence, and songwriting abilities. But even more important things happened after that album was released. Keith finally began to build valuable connections in Nashville. These were relationships that would open doors for him later on. Eventually, Keith decided it was time to step back into the solo spotlight. And so, in 1999, he released his first American solo album, another self-titled project called Keith Urban. And this one was the one that changed his life for good. The album's singles, especially But for the Grace of God, struck a chord with American audiences. The song eventually reached #1 on the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart, giving Keith his first United States chart topper. Suddenly, he wasn't just a talented Aussie anymore, he had become a rising star in country music. Critics praised his fresh sound, his smooth voice, and his jaw-dropping guitar solos. Fans loved that he brought a different flavor to country music. His sound was rooted in tradition, but with a modern emotional twist that felt new and exciting. And Keith didn't slow down. In 2002, he released his second United States studio album, titled Golden Road, and it was a blockbuster. This album eventually went triple platinum, and Keith's live performances were becoming the stuff of legend. Whether he was playing sold-out arenas or outdoor festivals, fans couldn't get enough of his high-energy shows and heartfelt ballads. And awards, they started pouring in too. Keith Urban won his first Academy of Country Music Award for Top New Male Vocalist in 2001. Not long after, he was named CMA's Horizon Award winner, given to the artist who showed the most significant career growth. By the mid-2000s, it was official. Keith Urban was one of country music's brightest stars. He had a loyal fan base, critical respect, and a string of hits that kept topping the charts. But one thing was still missing. Despite all the fame, the awards, and the success, Keith didn't have that one person to share it all with. Behind the big smiles and sold-out shows, he was still searching for real love, the kind of deep, true connection that inspired so many of his songs. And then, as if fate had been saving the best for last, Nicole Kidman entered his life. Their meeting would spark a love story that captured the hearts of millions around the world. However, just when life seemed picture-perfect, tragedy came knocking in a way no one could have predicted. Keith and Nicole's love story. After years of climbing to the top of their own worlds, Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman's paths finally crossed. And when they did, it was nothing short of magical. They met in January 2005 at the G'day USA Gala, an event celebrating Australians living in America. At the time, both of them were at the peak of their careers. Nicole was already an Academy Award-winning actress, and of course, Keith was a rising star in country music. But despite their fame, something about that night felt different. Nicole later admitted that she had felt an instant attraction, and it wasn't quite reciprocated. In fact, in interviews, she confessed, "I had such a crush on him, and he wasn't interested in me." Keith, on the other hand, was a little shy about making the first move. It actually took him 4 months to reach out and call Nicole after that night. But when he finally did, things moved quickly. Their connection was easy, natural, and incredibly strong. Both of them had been through their share of ups and downs. Nicole had gone through a very public divorce from Tom Cruise in 2001, and Keith had spent years fighting for his place in the tough music industry. They understood each other's scars, and maybe that's why their relationship felt so different right from the start. Just months after they officially started dating, Keith and Nicole were inseparable. They were spotted traveling together, attending events side by side, and supporting each other's work. Their bond wasn't just built on fame, it was built on deep respect and genuine love. In an interview, Keith confessed, "She's just the one. She's the one that I was searching for my whole life, and everything not only changed, but had to change in me if I was going to go that road." That's right, Keith was willing to change for Nicole, and give up whatever would stop their relationship from moving forward. One of the sweetest parts of their early relationship was how much they leaned on each other. Nicole would often attend Keith's concerts, cheering him on from backstage. And Keith, even though he wasn't a regular on the Hollywood red carpet, proudly supported Nicole at her movie premieres. In May 2006, Nicole took Keith as her date to the United Nations Development Fund for Women. And in a later interview, while speaking about the event, she announced the beautiful news of their engagement, saying, "He's actually my fiancé. I wouldn't be bringing my boyfriend." A month after news of their engagement broke, Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman tied the knot in a beautiful ceremony in Sydney, Australia. The wedding took place at the Cardinal Ciretti Memorial Chapel on the grounds of St. Patrick's Estate in Manly. It was a traditional Catholic ceremony attended by close friends and family, and the whole ceremony was super intimate and emotional. From the start, their marriage was built on deep commitment. The couple focused on healing from their past traumas and building a very deep and solid friendship, and that foundation helped them weather the storms that would come later. Both Nicole and Keith continued reaching new heights in their careers after getting married, but instead of competing with each other, they lifted each other up. Nicole Kidman had already made her mark in Hollywood before she met Keith. She won an Oscar for her role as Virginia Woolf in The Hours in 2003 and had starred in major films like Moulin Rouge, The Others, and Cold Mountain. After marrying Keith, her career didn't slow down. In fact, she kept taking on bold, challenging roles. Her performances won her even more awards, including Emmys, Golden Globes, and critical acclaim for her fearless approach to every character she played. Nicole became known not just for her beauty, but for her deep emotional performances that touched audiences around the world. Meanwhile, Keith's career skyrocketed too. After their marriage, he released more albums, which produced multiple #1 hits. He didn't just become a chart-topping artist, he became a respected musician across genres, with multiple prestigious awards to his name. But what's even more inspiring is how both Keith and Nicole used their platforms for good. Nicole became an advocate for women's rights and a global ambassador for UNICEF and United Nations Women. Keith, on the other hand, was also involved in multiple charities, especially ones focused on cancer research, at-risk youth, and disaster relief efforts. But through all their success, they made their family their top priority. In 2008, they welcomed their first daughter, Sunday Rose Kidman Urban. 2 years later, in 2010, they had their second daughter, Faith Margaret Kidman Urban, via surrogate. Nicole has often said that motherhood is her greatest joy, and Keith, too, has spoken about how much he cherishes being a dad. Together, they built a life rooted in love, mutual respect, and deep faith in each other. Over the years, they also became known as one of the entertainment industry's most stable couples, a rare achievement in a world where celebrity marriages often collapse under pressure. In almost every interview, Nicole would gush about Keith's kindness, and Keith, too, would talk about Nicole's strength and how their admiration for each other shines through. They weren't just a power couple, they were soulmates who found each other against all odds. But even love as strong as that gets tested in the most unimaginable way possible. Keith and Nicole have had their fair share of tragedies, which have tested their love like never before. Keith's personal battles. Keith Urban's story has never been just about fame and fortune. It's been a journey filled with personal battles, deep struggles, and moments that tested his willpower and his relationship with Nicole Kidman. As much as Keith's career has been defined by his undeniable talent, it's the darker side of his story, especially his struggles with addiction, that has shaped much of his life, both professionally and personally. In the early days of his rise to stardom, Keith was the picture of success. His music was topping charts, his guitar skills were turning heads, and he had become a household name in the country music scene. But behind the scenes, there was a side to Keith that only a few knew about, one that involved long periods of substance abuse. Keith himself has been open about his struggles with alcoholism and addiction, especially in the early years of his career. It wasn't something that happened overnight, but gradually, the pressures of fame and the lifestyle that came with it took a toll on him. At the height of his career, Keith was drinking heavily and using illicit substances to cope with the stress. But it wasn't until 2006, just after he married Nicole, that his battle with addiction became public. Just 4 months after their wedding, Keith entered a treatment facility in Syracuse, New York, to seek help. He later opened up about the experience, admitting that he had hit rock bottom. He said that the decision to seek help came not just from his own desire for change, but from the realization that his addiction was beginning to affect everything, including his marriage to Nicole. Nicole Kidman, known for her grace and composure, was faced with the reality of a husband struggling with addiction. In many interviews, she shared how hard it was for her to see Keith in that state. She once said that she felt a deep sense of helplessness, knowing that the man she loved was going through something so personal and painful. Despite her own emotional pain, Nicole stood by Keith during his recovery. She remained his biggest support, even when things seemed uncertain. Their relationship was tested in ways that many couples would never have to endure. Addiction is a disease that impacts not just the person struggling with it, but everyone around them. It's easy for outsiders to look at their fairy tale marriage and think it was smooth sailing. But behind closed doors, Keith's addiction was one of the biggest challenges they both faced. Nicole, however, wasn't just a passive observer. She made it clear that she wasn't going to enable Keith's behavior. She was supportive, but she also made it known that he had to take responsibility for his own healing. In one interview, she stated, "You can't save somebody, they've got to save themselves." After completing his rehabilitation in 2006, Keith took a long, hard look at his life. He began to rebuild himself, focusing on his career and his relationship with Nicole. He later admitted that his struggles with addiction had made him reevaluate everything he thought he knew about himself, and it was in that period of recovery that he began to take more responsibility for his actions. Despite his recovery, Keith's addiction struggles continued to cast a shadow over his career. The pressures of life on the road, coupled with the stress of public expectations, made it difficult for him to stay sober. But instead of hiding from his mistakes, Keith was transparent about them. He addressed his struggles in interviews, acknowledging that recovery is a lifelong process. His wife, Nicole, was always so supportive and continued to stand by him. In interviews, she's spoken about how their relationship deepened through these tough times. She also confessed that they both learned to be vulnerable with each other, to talk openly about their fears, and to put in the work to make their marriage stronger. However, addiction wasn't the only challenge Keith faced. Over the years, he's also been involved in several controversies and scandals that have threatened to overshadow his career. While many of these issues weren't as serious as his personal struggles with addiction, they still made some serious headlines and stirred up intense media attention that didn't always sit right with Nicole. One of the most notable controversies happened when he compared an Ariana Grande song to an illicit substance. He had meant it as a compliment, praising how addictive and catchy the track was. However, the choice of words didn't sit well with everyone. Some fans thought it was an odd comparison, considering Keith's own past struggles with addiction. And reportedly, Nicole Kidman wasn't thrilled either. Insiders said she wished he had been a little more careful, especially given how sensitive that topic is for their family. But that wasn't the only time Keith found himself in the middle of a heated conversation. His 2017 song Female, released during the height of the #MeToo movement, sparked a lot of debate. The song was written as a tribute to women and aimed to be an anthem of respect and empowerment. Some praised Keith for using his platform to stand with women during a critical time. But others criticized the song as feeling a little late or overly simplistic, questioning whether it was the right way to address such a serious issue. However, through his heartbreaking battle with addiction, the multiple controversies, and the media scrutiny, Keith's relationship with Nicole remained a pillar of strength. The public may have been quick to judge him for his personal struggles or to criticize him for the occasional misstep. But Nicole was there, through thick and thin, supporting her husband. The challenges they've faced have only deepened their bond. However, nothing could have prepared the couple for the devastating health challenges Keith has had to endure. Keith's health challenges and rumors. Over the years, fans have noticed the fact that Keith Urban's appearance has changed, and not always in ways that felt reassuring. At some point, whispers began to swirl when Keith showed up at events looking noticeably thinner. Some fans have expressed worry over his health, especially because of the possibility that the pressures of fame or the lingering effects of his past struggles were taking a toll on his health. His sharp cheekbones, lean frame, and occasional gaunt appearance have sparked endless online speculation. With so many people asking if he was just staying fit for the demands of touring, or if there was something more serious going on behind the scenes. While Keith has never publicly addressed the weight loss rumors in detail, insiders close to the country star say that his intense touring schedule and commitment to maintaining a healthy lifestyle have definitely played a major role. Keith has always been an energetic performer, known for running across massive stages, delivering high-energy shows night after night. The truth remains that this kind of physical demand can naturally lead to a leaner look. Still, for fans who absolutely love him, the changes were alarming. Whenever Keith posted photos on social media or appeared at award shows, the comment sections would fill up with concerns about his health, with everyone wanting to know if he was truly okay. And then came the news that made everyone's hearts sink even deeper. In 2011, Keith revealed that he had undergone vocal cord surgery, something that could have threatened his entire career. For a singer, the voice isn't just an instrument, it's the heart and soul of everything they do. And so, when Keith announced that he had to undergo surgery to remove a polyp on his vocal cords, it sent shockwaves through both the music world and his fan base. Keith was forced to cancel multiple performances and appearances, including the prestigious All for the Hall benefit concert in Los Angeles. He underwent a surgery called microsurgery, which is a delicate operation that involves removing the non-cancerous polyp from his vocal cords. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Any mistake, any tiny slip during surgery could have changed his voice forever. And for someone like Keith, whose voice was one of his biggest gifts, the fear was real. After the surgery, Keith was placed on strict vocal rest, meaning he couldn't speak at all for several weeks. For someone who lived his life on stage and in interviews, the silence was overwhelming. Nicole even reportedly joked that Keith became really good at texting during that period. But behind the laughter, there was real fear. Would his voice come back the same? And would he be able to sing with the same passion and power? Thankfully, after a long recovery, Keith returned to the stage stronger than ever. He later said that the surgery actually helped improve the clarity of his voice. Still, the experience left a scar, and a reminder that everything he had worked so hard for could be taken away in an instant. But just as fans were breathing a sigh of relief over Keith's recovery, darker rumors began swirling again. This time, even scarier. In 2018, reports started to surface claiming that Keith Urban had been quietly battling prostate cancer. The rumors spread quickly online, fueled by vague tabloid headlines and fan speculation. Some said Keith had been seen visiting medical centers known for cancer treatment. Others pointed to his thin appearance and private demeanor as signs that something serious was happening. However, the truth was a little more complicated. You see, Keith Urban has actually never publicly confirmed a diagnosis of prostate cancer for himself. However, he has taken part in several fundraising events and public campaigns related to prostate cancer awareness, inspired by the memory of close friends and family members who sadly fought the disease. In fact, Keith's beloved father, Robert Urban, passed away in December 2015 after a long battle with prostate cancer. Keith spoke very emotionally about his father's death, calling it a very big hole left in his life. His father's experience left a deep impact on Keith, and this actually motivated him to become more involved in prostate cancer awareness efforts. Keith has been deeply involved in cancer charities, and most times is seen visibly emotional when it comes to cancer-related issues. Still, the rumors and the very real possibility of losing Keith to health struggles have left fans shaken. And it wasn't just fans who were worried. Nicole Kidman, too, has faced her own fears about Keith's health. She's talked in interviews about how precious life feels, especially after seeing loved ones face serious illnesses. For Nicole, every day with Keith is a gift, one she doesn't take for granted. Keith, too, has embraced life with a renewed sense of gratitude. He's often said that going through personal challenges, especially addiction, which almost took his life, and enduring surgery, made him appreciate his family, his health, and his career even more. And he's never stopped pushing forward. Despite everything, Keith continues to perform, to create new music, and to live his life with the same passion that made him a star in the first place. And through it all, Nicole Kidman has been right there by his side, showing the world what true love and devotion really look like. Nicole and Keith's unbreakable bond. Through all of Keith Urban's health battles, from the extremely difficult addiction that nearly ruined his life to the vocal surgery that almost cost him his career, there has been one person who has never left his side. And that person is Nicole Kidman. For Nicole, Keith's struggles haven't been just headlines or public scandals. They've been deeply personal, emotional experiences that tested her strength as a wife and as a partner. Behind the glamorous red carpet appearances and sweet public moments, Nicole has fought her own private battles. She's had to deal with the fear of losing the man she loves, the heartbreak of seeing him in pain, and the overwhelming helplessness that comes when someone you adore is fighting demons you can't control. At this point, it's so clear to everyone that Nicole is super protective of Keith. She's not the type to air her private life publicly, but her love for him has always been crystal clear. When Keith underwent his vocal cord surgery, Nicole reportedly cleared her schedule just to be by his side during the entire recovery. She was there during the silent days when he couldn't speak, cheering him up with little notes, quiet conversations, and endless support. And when Keith faced whispers about prostate cancer, the fear was still real for Nicole, especially because Keith's father had suffered the same fate. Insiders say that Nicole's strength during Keith's lowest moments is the glue that kept their marriage together, and Keith himself has never shied away from giving her credit. He calls her his support system, and is always quick to point out how blessed he is to have her by his side. In fact, Keith once confessed, meeting her and getting married wasn't life-changing. It was life-beginning. But Nicole's love hasn't just been about standing by Keith in private. She's also fiercely celebrated his victories, especially the sobriety milestones and the triumphant return to music after vocal surgery. Today, when fans look at Keith and Nicole, they don't just see a Hollywood couple. They see a story of resilience, loyalty, and true partnership. But what do you think kept Keith and Nicole's love so strong through it all? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible stories.